What's up, YouTube? Scott here with the Carrera Cafe. Behind me is a 2017 R8 Spyder. Today's video marks a really important milestone for the channel. Thanks to your guys' support, we've gained enough traction to get some attention from a local dealership here in my town, and they've graciously given us access to some of their inventory so I can keep bringing you guys videos, not just about the vehicles in my garage, but about some other luxury sports cars as well. So this vehicle comes to us from Audi Exchange Kirkwood. I'll have a link in the description for this particular R8 if that's of interest to you, as well as just some of their other inventory. They've got a location here in St. Louis and then two in the suburbs outside Chicago, Illinois. So today we're going to be spending some time with this R8, and I'm going to talk about a few things as to why I think this is going to be a future classic and why us enthusiasts should start considering this vehicle. Alright, so we're behind the wheel of the Audi R8. We'll start with a little bit of history, just in case you don't know. There's two generations of the R8. The first generation started in the US here in 2007, and it actually had a 4.2 liter naturally aspirated V8, and it came with two transmission types, Audi's R-Tronic, which would have been the single clutch, kind of similar to the SMG or the E-Gear. And as you can see, you get people waving at you in this car. And then there was actually a facelift in Generation 1 where you could have gotten the S-Tronic transmission, which would have been the dual clutch, and they moved away from the 4.2 liter V8 to the 5.2 liter V10, which is in this vehicle, all in that first generation. So there was actually a couple years where you could have gotten a 6-speed gated and a V10, which would have been a really awesome combo. When you're looking at the used market, those tend to hold their values more than the earlier R-Tronics. But what I really like about this vehicle is those early generation vehicles are easy to get into. It's one of the more inexpensive exotic cars where you can kind of get that exotic car ownership and experience without spending six figures. When I did a quick look on Auto Trader, there's about 600, 700 of these for sale. And some of the cheapest early generation R-Tronic V8s were in the $60,000 range, which was pretty awesome. Fast forward a bit, this is the second generation. There's unfortunately no longer the gated 6-speed, but they all come with the dual clutch S-Tronic, which does really well at different varying speeds. I mean, I've got the vehicle in dynamic right now, and I'm not really on the gas at all. I can shift and it's super smooth, but if I were to be wide open, it's gonna shift aggressive. It does a really good job at blending. And then there's now only one engine type, which is the 5.2 V10, but it does come in a V10 Plus variant with more horsepower. But this car is essentially a budget Lamborghini Huracan. And for those of you that don't know, the R8's been discontinued essentially. They gave us one variant at the end, which was the GT model, which made the most power, had the most aggressive aerodynamics and carbon trim on the outside. There was about 150 of those in the US. But because of that, I think that these are gonna really be an enthusiast kind of future modern classic, because the values I think are going to maintain or potentially go up. You know, you really take a risk when getting into exotic cars because you just don't know what the future looks like. If you take, for example, a brand new Aston Martin, there's people that bought one for 350 grand and now can't sell it for 200. I mean, they're taking a $150,000 hit inside of the 18 months, right? And that's just not the case here. And I think you can attribute that to this being just more of a consumer, user-friendly exotic. Plus, I love that Audi hasn't done like all these crazy levels of variants. Like if you look at Ferrari and Lamborghini, there are all these different trim levels that I'm just not familiar with. And they got some special vinyl graphic or some special wheel, and they produce 300 of them. And it just kind of feels like a bit of a money grab. And the R8's just not like that. You know, there's really only a couple variants in trims. And because it's kind of falls into this sweet spot of vehicle, it's just more affordable. One of the things that I really like that Audi chose to do in this, which at the time people were not happy with, but I think now it's actually an appeal, which is this vehicle doesn't have a center screen. It's got Audi's virtual cockpit in the gauge cluster where you're gonna have all your infotainment, navigation, all the performance stuff, but there's no screen in the middle. And the reason I like that is because if you look at some of the exotics that were produced in 2010 to 2015, you get in them and you're reminded of that because of that center screen. Some of them just become useless over time and they don't age very well because of that. Audi did a good job in here deciding not to do a center stack, and I really love that they did traditional climate controls. There's not a bunch of haptic BS in here. This is really a sweet spot in terms of we still got buttons and knobs versus all these touch screens and haptic stuff to make it more of a less distracted driving experience. And man, there's so much potential left when I'm driving on these corners. Obviously this vehicle belongs to Audi Exchange Kirkwood, so we're going to be careful with it while still having some fun, but it just wants to go, go, go. And I'm not a huge convertible guy, but I think in the R8 case, it does make a lot of sense if you're in an area where the climate agrees with you, because it's so awesome to be able to hear everything right behind you. This visor comes on and off, so you get the sound. I certainly love the coupe and the extra, stiffness that you would get from the coupe body, but the convertible driving experience on a good day like today is just awesome. Wow. I love the Audi steering feedback. It's a really good mix of stiff, but not, doesn't require a ton of feedback. I'm not a huge flat bottom guy, if you know what I mean, but when it comes to steering wheels, I do like a flat bottom, and Audi's always done a great job with that, dating all the way back to the, early A5s with the S-Line package. I remember when that Will Smith I, Robot movie came out, and that's when they first kind of teased the R8. I mean, it just looked like a concept that you'd think never would have existed, but when 2007 rolled around, I mean, it's awesome to look at, that's for sure. And although this car gets attention, it's not obnoxious level attention. I really like that this car does fly a little bit under the radar when compared to the Lamborghinis and the Ferraris and the Aston Martins. This is a little bit more subtle, especially if you kind of put everything in comfort mode and you're not driving aggressively. It's not going to get as many looks, which is nice. I'm not interested in the, bright red look at me experience a lot. I want to go out and drive and just, enjoy it. As far as powertrain goes, this does come in a rear-wheel drive variant as well as the all-wheel drive. Because this is the Spyder, it's standard with the all-wheel drive. So, but it would be pretty cool to drive one of these rear-wheel drive. It would certainly probably be a handful. I would be a little more cautious around corners, that's for sure. One of the little things I've noticed already when driving this is I've turned the car on and off multiple times, and I haven't had to readjust the driving modes. I don't know if that's memory saved to the key fob, but I had the vehicle in dynamic most of the time, and I've turned it on and off and it stayed that way, which is pretty cool. So obviously from a value perspective, I think that's one of the reasons why this car will become a future classic. But secondly, it's kind of in the sweet spot in terms of technology. I was joking when I opened the door, but it's still got mechanical door handles, which is nice. Like I said, the analog climate control, you know, there's just things in here that aren't going to break because there's not too much technology. But at the same time, Audi's virtual cockpit is going to give you enough of that technology feel where you won't feel like if you're driving this car 10 years from now that you're, you know, selling yourself short by not having something brand new at this point. Then I also think the styling, I mean, this has just always been an iconic car. For the record, I was not crossing the line there. That person was just unhappy. I think the styling is just iconic. You know, even the early generations prior to the facelift, it was still a really good looking vehicle. And as the second generation came out, Audi kind of sharpened the lines a bit. And it just really, it's on brand. It's nice and aggressive looking. And I think it's going to age very well. Also the fact that there's no forced induction, right? Everything nowadays is going to some type of turbo hybrid powertrain. You know, I love the fact that for this long period of a time, you can still get a naturally aspirated V10, and that's just going to get harder and harder to come by. Certainly you can get more power and performance and fuel economy out of some of these other options, but long term, I mean, there's just less to go wrong with this. It's just going to be more sought after as manufacturers lean more and more towards that forced induction and kind of hybrid powertrain. Man, this thing just corners so well. You just point it, it goes. Give it a little gas, get some nice pops and bangs. So again, this vehicle is actually on loaner to me from Audi Exchange Kirkwood here in St. Louis. They've got 2 stores up outside Chicago as well. If you're interested in this specific R8, I'll have a link in the description below, as well as a link to the rest of their inventory. Not only do they have other Audis, but they've got other German luxury brands as well. Thanks to their trust and faith in the channel and your guys' support, we're going to hopefully bring you guys more videos with more content outside of the garage. So I appreciate you guys continuing to watch, and we'll see you along for the next one.